everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar. Just give me a second. I will toggle on our live streaming services and we'll also, wait for a few more folks to trickle in before before starting the webinar. As usual, this is Akmal, who is our speaker today, and I'm Yukti, who is a growth marketing analyst here at SingleStore, and we're very happy to bring this webinar to you. And this is a very requested topic. It's called building applications with DeepSeek and SingleStore. So I actually got a lot of requests from a lot of folks, and also as feedback that you should present this particular topic for one of your webinars. So yeah, we have Akmal, who is a very regular speaker here at our webinars. A lot of you actually might know him as well if you have attended our previous webinars. So he's a senior technical evangelist here at SingleStore. So if you have any questions related to any projects you're working on, or if you encounter any issues, so basically you are currently in a listen only mode, and we would like you all to have a real time experience. So during that, if you have any issues, you can address them using the Zoom Q&A button, which is present at the bottom of your console. I see that someone's raised their hand. I'm very sorry, we actually just take the questions using the Zoom Q&A button. So if you have anything, you just write it there. I'll try my best to take care of that. Our internal policy is that we try to answer 100% of the audience questions live. So just add in your questions. We also have a Discord server and the link to everything. Akmal, do we have a notebook for this webinar?
There's a couple of links, Yukti. So there's a link to my GitHub repo, plus there's an article which would be
You
helpful.
can actually, just meanwhile, you can just Slack them to me, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'll add them in the chat. So just an
Yes.
FYI, we are going to provide you all the resources like for everyone that's attending live, so that you can make the best use of your time. We really value your time. Thanks for joining again. So we so that you can make the best use of your time and follow along in real time. So and obviously if you're prompted with anything, just let us know. It's absolutely free. SingleStore has a free shared tier, so you can literally follow along with Akmal and just proceed as the webinar progresses. So we'll Akmal, please just let me know if I've missed anything, or you can just take
No,
it.
that's fine, Yukti. So
Yeah.
I've noticed that the Zoom app seems to have changed. There was a time when the video used to pop up on the right-hand side. Anyway, I am just sharing some links with you, okay?
Yeah,
So
I'm putting everything in the chat for all
all
the
right,
people to
yeah, I've
access,
just
and we can
paused the
get started.
screen momentarily, and let me just take a look. Um, Bear with me whilst I just get my coordinates for the way this. There we are. So now I've got the video up as well, which is great. That's what I wanted. I want to be able to see myself. Apologies, I noticed I've got reflection off my glasses. I'm sorry about that. It's just the light here, the way it is. If I take my glasses off, I have to squint. So I apologize. But I've shared the link to the GitHub repo, which you may be able to see there. All right. And there's an article as well, which again I'll send to Yukti, and then she'll post that into the chat there. Okay, so a couple of resources there for you to um, have a look at in your own time. Okay, now, all right, let me just move back here, and let's have a look. Let's just get back to the slideshow. All right, so let's just say, there we are. Start from the beginning. Hopefully you can see that okay. And so Yukti normally mentions that we have this auto registration feature, which is a great way to get notified of forthcoming webinars. It's not too spammy, okay? And you can choose to be removed as well if you wish to do so. But it's a great way. I mean, remember, you get the invite, but you don't have to attend, okay? So it's up to you. I mean, if you want to just keep up to date with these. And as Yukti mentioned, I think this is the QR code for the cloud trial. So the URL has changed a bit, but that shorthand, which is there, okay, singlestore.com/cloud hyphen trial. Okay, so please do sign up for that. Now, I'm going to be running some stuff locally on my Mac. So the whole idea of using these LLMs like DeepSeek, for example, is that yes, there are cloud providers out there, and actually you could do them on DeepSeek itself. Okay, you can go to the website there and register, and you could do it there, much like OpenAI and other LLM providers. However, there is an advantage to running things locally yourself, partly because it's self-contained, and that's helpful in terms of evaluating the technology in your own time. Secondly, you don't pay anybody any money for the privilege. So that's useful too. And so that's what we're going to do today, okay? So I'll tell you what my setup is, but essentially, I'm just using Ollama. And in the past, I've shown Ollama using the script that they have for Linux. Today, I'm going to show you on my Mac. So I just use Homebrew. I just installed Ollama using Homebrew, and then I've just created a virtual environment, and I'm running Jupyter inside that. And that's it, really. And we've got some notebooks, and the GitHub repo contains all the notebooks that I'm going to show you today. But we'll get on to a bit more of that. All right. So let's kind of move on a little bit here. So I cut back the slides a little bit today just to leave more time. If you're a regular, you know that unfortunately I have a habit of talking too much and then just not having enough time to discuss and take your questions. So Occam's razor, I think is the phrase. I've tried to cut stuff out. There we go. All right. So let's just use the standard two slides that we always show about SingleStore. So as the company, and so founded way back in 2011, feels like an age ago now. You know, the world kind of moves on. We are, I think, well, I mean, that's 2024. We should add an extra bar there. But some milestones along the way here. So we've got a bunch of investors as well, as you can see down the bottom here. So Goldman Sachs, Khosla Ventures, for example, IBM, Hewlett Packard, and so on. Okay. So I was reminded, I did a presentation just recently, and I was reminded of the story. It was the gentleman's name was Victor Kayam. So he used to do these television advertisements in the United Kingdom, and he used to say that, you know, he bought I think it was a Remington shaver. So he liked the shaver so much, he went and bought the company. And you know, this is very much what reminds me. So some of these investors that you see there along the bottom, they are actually users of the technology first. So they used SingleStore, they liked it so much, and then they came and invested in the company because they liked the product. Okay, so we have over 400 global customers. I think this number is around about 450 now, roughly, I think. So this slide needs a bit of updating. And again, in terms of annual recurring revenue, that figure of 100 million plus needs to be updated as well. But that will give you a rough idea in terms of the company and its, you know, Fortune, I think 50, 100, 500 customers, the varying degrees there. All right. So the overall architecture. So as a company initially called MemSQL, focusing very much on online transaction processing, and the product and the company used to be MemSQL, and subsequently added support for columnar and the ability to do analytics. Didn't make sense to call yourself MemSQL anymore in that case, and so they changed the name to SingleStore. There is a single table type that can handle both types of requirements, both OLTP and OLAP. Okay, these have been covered in the past. We do have integrations with lots of external technology. They're just some examples here. So for streaming, you know that I tend to use a Kafka broker. If you're a regular, we have a couple of topics, stock ticker and ad tech type data transformations. We have a connector for Spark, and you can run Spark as well in our portal. Bulk load from external sources, so S3 buckets, for example, or Hadoop HDFS. And the animation here just shows the ingest in parallel at scale, okay, which you can get into the product. We do work on all three major cloud providers in the Western world, so AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, and today we will be using AWS, okay? You can install on-prem, rather important for some customers, okay? So despite all the benefits that the cloud gives us, and there was a time when people worried about security and all those kind of related issues, important as they were, and many of them have been addressed. Nevertheless, for various reasons, some customers do still like to run on-prem. They have some legal obligations, legal requirements, and so on, and therefore that's fine too. The product is what's termed as multimodal, okay? So we do support relational, naturally, that's where the product came from, but other types, geospatial, which we've done in the past, time series, full text search, which Yukti and we did a webinar in December last year, and that's the new release, okay? So as you know, the Lucene full text engine has been updated. We do actually have some customers doing key value as well. A little bit unusual, but still possible. And vectors, of course, hot topic. It's been a while, I know, since ChatGPT came around, but keep in mind that SingleStore has had vector support since 2017 or so. Lots of updates since that time. I think there's some, a dedicated vector type, indexing, and so on. And if you are a customer, you will probably be privy to the roadmap. So there's lots of other cool things in the pipeline that SingleStore is planning for vectors, amongst other things as well. All right, and then just round it off in terms of real-time analytics, applications, and so on, okay? So there's quite a lot to discuss there. All right, now, if you are working with AI and machine learning, some of the technologies that you can very easily use with SingleStore, and by the way, this is not an exhaustive list. There are some examples, principally because I tend to use these. So Spark, okay, if you are working with that, runs quite well on a very small scale in our Jupyter notebook environment in the cloud. It's not really designed for in terms of distributed processing, but you can have a Spark master running, okay? So I've demoed that in the past, and that works quite well. Equally, if you have a Spark environment, we do have a Spark connector as well. There are customers that use that combination, and you can get data in and out very easily, as well as using some of the nice features in terms of push down, for example, that Spark will see that the database system can handle certain queries much better, and it will literally just push those down to the database system to run instead. Python client, okay, so machine learning libraries, scikit-learn, for example, is a good one. In the event that you want to work with the vector function, so Euclidean distance, dot products are built in. Cosine similarity, you can very easily code. In fact, it's documented in the product documentation how you could just write some SQL code to achieve that. Very straightforward. And as I mentioned, historically, we started with blobs as the means to store vectors, and now we have a dedicated vector type, okay? So that, there is type checking there. It makes it a lot better, as well as indexing and all sorts of nice features around that too. The code engine using WebAssembly, very useful technology. I think we don't really say enough about that. It's a way to extend the capabilities of the engine. So literally, you can use something like C++ or Rust, code up a module, load that into the database system, and then it will treat that as a UDF, and it will run that for you. And that's run in a separate space. So in the event there is a bug, you're not going to bring your entire database system crashing down, okay? So that's a very useful feature. And then one of the examples that I've shown several times in several articles in the past is this thing called VADA, Valence Aware Dictionary and Sentiment Reasoner, okay? And in fact, I was just in a conversation with DZone just recently. They asked me, do a survey and we'll highlight one of your articles and then tell us which article to highlight. And I thought, okay, well, please use the one that I demonstrate how to use WebAssembly and doing sentiment analysis on Stack Overflow data. So that is something that's available on DZone already, but they'll promote that a little bit more for me. We've done a lot of OpenAI in the past, and we've also demoed Bedrock, AWS, using some of the LLMs that they have available, as well as the in terms of creating the vector embeddings. But today we're going to use DeepSeek, okay, and that's going to be running locally. All right. So one of the things that is of concern, I think, to quite a number of people is this, need to have greater control over where data are being processed. The fact that you are using these APIs externally, you're sending data across the wire to these third parties to process for you. Is concerning to some people, particularly if it's sensitive data, and therefore, building this kind of retrieval augmented generation to handle enterprise data and to have more control over that, where that runs and where you process it, I think is rather an important issue for a lot of organizations out there before they'll commit to doing this at scale. And one of the ways that we could do that is simply be able to run this within our own environments. Okay, so you'll see an example of that today. Equally, as you know, some of these cloud providers have these mechanisms, private subnets, VPC, and they have stronger agreements with some of these LLM providers. So the ability to do something like this is also an option. But as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, some companies, I think here, particularly in the financial world, the financial domain, have some obligations and some issues and some legal requirements. And it's difficult for them to be able to run things in the cloud for various reasons. And in those circumstances, the ability to, host an environment behind your own firewall and download these LLMs, and again, you're not paying someone for the privilege of using them. Something like Ollama, which I'm going to show you today, is a very simple way to do it. Other solutions are also available, but Ollama is just super simple to set up and just experiment and try it out. I mean, that's the benefit that you get. Okay, so there are things that we have to think about. And privacy. And I think, what I've observed over the years is that whenever these new technologies come around, it's a bit like swings and roundabouts, right? We face the same issues and challenges over and over again. People are concerned. Business leaders are concerned. They want to have control over the data and to ensure that it's processed as they see fit. And the ability to use third parties, yes, it's great and it's helpful in terms of the services that they provide, but you feel as though you're leaving issues up to somebody else to manage for you, okay? And that's sometimes worrying. Eventually, these things get addressed, okay? Go back in time, and I'm sure you've been through the same experience. I mean, that's unfortunately the nature of technology, and it's even worse today because of the speed with which change tends to come. It's so fast. 6 months is too long. A month is too long. Even on a daily basis, there are new announcements all the time. I mean, it's very, very challenging. And the poor business leader, he or she is faced with these concerns and challenges, and equally for the developer, you're kind of wondering what technology you should be learning now. In a week's time, someone else has come out with something better. It's very, very difficult and challenging. I don't envy you. So anyway, we can discuss that another time. Okay, so a couple of the ways that then you could use large language models with SingleStore. So there is this opportunity, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier on. You saw that in the slide, that you can run SingleStore locally. Okay, that's behind your firewall, entirely within your own environment. You can use the cloud-based offering. Okay, that's kind of remote. And interestingly, there is even a hybrid option which combines both of these. So part of your architecture, if you like, with SingleStore, you could be running locally, and then that connects to the cloud-based environment as well. So that might be an option as well for some of you. With the LLMs, again, the generally, I mean, if you are paying for the privilege and using one of these third-party providers, typically you're sending your data remotely. Today, we're going to be using it locally. Okay. So in the setup that I've got today, because I've got a Mac with somewhat restricted resources, I've got Ollama to do the local, but I'm connecting securely to SingleStore in the cloud. Okay. Potentially, I could install SingleStore locally as well. It's something I'll think about. I have done it in the virtual machine in the past. Haven't installed it natively on the Mac. It's possible, but again, you probably want to think about that on a larger piece of hardware if you are doing enterprise level work. On a Mac, it's doable, but I don't know if there's any real benefits. I do like the remote environment for building small scale demos and applications. So you can see all of these combinations are possible, and therefore it's a question of if you want to try something out. I think this small scale tests will work well, mainly because with the LLM, you have entire control over that in your local environment, and you're connecting securely to a cloud-based environment for the purposes of just testing this. I think that's reasonable and that will work well. Okay. Briefly then, Ollama, great. I mean, and as I mentioned earlier, there are other options available as well. Okay, so LLM, and others. There are IDEs as well that allow you to do development, but this is super simple. I mean, it allows us to run DeepSeek locally on the Mac, okay, equally on Linux and Windows. It can take advantage of GPUs if you have those installed. There is wide model support. Okay, so it's a question of finding something that's suitable for the work at hand. And again, in terms of the size of the model that you want, I'm going to be using the smallest one simply for reasons of expediency, speed, and because I'm a little bit constrained in terms of resources, even though the Mac has about 16 gigabytes. Nevertheless, it's good to have the opportunity to run something small scale just for testing purposes. Customization and integration. Again, one of the links that Yukti will share with you, and I think she may have done already, is an article I wrote a while back using LangChain. And again, that was published on DZone. So that works really well. And again, the benefit of using a framework such as LangChain is it does the plumbing, all the stuff behind the scenes for you, which you as a developer may otherwise have to worry about. Just getting the data in creating the index, just pass the parameters in and it will do that all for you. Create the table, store the data, and you can do the similarity search as well. And you can even specify what is the mechanism that you want in terms of doing the similarity search, whether it's dot product or Euclidean distance, for example. Okay, super easy to use. And then equally, if you were to take LangChain away and try and do the equivalent by hand, again, there's an article on DZone that I wrote that did exactly that. So I showed the two cases, one with this framework and one without, and then how much more work there is required to do it without LangChain, plus the maintenance costs that you may have going forward in terms of having to look after the code. There's more that you have to think about in that case. Excuse me. All right. These are just a simple set of instructions in terms of if you want to run things locally. So what I did was, yes, I've got a virtual environment set up with the cloud environment. Okay, we'll look at that in a moment. Basically, you need just to grab the connection details, and that's really easy to do. You don't even need to create a database on the free tier, okay? So that will work well because you get a database already. And here you can see the instructions for Linux. Okay, so basically this is just giving us Jupyter. There's the actual installation for LangChain. You can see that using curl. And then this one is rather important. We just create an environment variable, just an export here, SingleStore DB underscore URL. So we provide the username, okay, the password, the host, the port number, and the database, okay? And again, I'll show you where you can get that information and then basically just launch it, okay? Run Jupyter and you're ready to get going. Very, very straightforward. And again, fairly low cost. All right, so let's now switch across, okay? And I'll show you a couple of things. So let me just minimize this a moment there. So the link, once you've created, let me just make this a little bit bigger. Okay, zoom in and maybe one more. Let's have a look. There we go. Okay, so when you've created your free SingleStore account and you've logged in, it will look something like this, as you can see. So the two main things that are important, one here on the left-hand side is this thing called deployments. Okay, and the other one, which you may well use a lot, is again this thing here called Data Studio. Okay, so under deployments, if we take a look, you should see that you automatically have this free shared tier enabled and up and running for you. So you've got compute resources, okay, and you've got a database. Now, in the event that you would like to change the name of the workspace, which currently here you can see it says starter workspace 1. And then for my database, you can see that I've got this thing, DB underscore very fat boy. That's something I set. You can easily do that, okay? So all you need to do is at the top here, you'll see these three vertical dots. If you select this, you can then terminate this workspace and drop the database. Be aware that once the database is dropped, if you've got anything in there, you can't recover it, okay? So bear that in mind. So as you log in, you'll see, and you should see that the compute and the database, you already have something running. And if you don't like the name of the workspace, you don't like the name of the database, you can terminate this and recreate it, okay? Now, how do you recreate it? You do it at the top here. Okay, so under this section here, okay, you can see this pull down, which is, if we select this, you can see here that currently, yep, I'm running this under the free shared tier, but I have the option for new deployment. All right, let me just show you this. So if I select this, you'll see that starter is not an option available to me because it's already running. We are only allowed one. At the moment, you can't create more than one. So that's ghosted, but you've got the option to create standard. Okay. And standard gives you more flexibility. So as part of the sign up process, you do get free credits. You do not burn through your credits under the free shared tier. I leave mine running all the time. Okay, it's great to just have that continuously running in the background. When I need to demo something, then I know that the compute and the database are available at any time, and I can just simply connect to them. The standard will burn through credits. Okay, so you can choose the group name, you can choose your preferred cloud provider. So, you know, from AWS, GCP, Azure, for example, you can choose the region. So physically here, for example, I'm in London, so I would probably choose maybe Europe West 2 for AWS and so on. Okay, and then just do the next button here. Now, why is this useful? Because you may have slightly more, you know, in terms of the requirements, maybe beyond what the free shared tier currently provides. Okay, so there are some obvious limitations around that in terms of number of tables, database size, and so on. But here you can configure this and choose something bigger. So you just select the edit button here, and that will give you lots of choices in terms of number of virtual CPUs, the amount of memory, and then how many credits that will burn through per hour. So for example, this S00, which I'm currently looking at here, That gives you 2 virtual CPUs, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and that will burn through 0.28 credits per hour. So actually, you could leave that running for quite some time, and it won't consume huge amount of resources. Okay, now I'll just go back here, okay, because I don't need this. You can get going with the free shared tier. So as I said before, just check that that's running, okay? And then if I select Data Studio now from the left nav, you can see here that I'm running a SQL editor, okay? So under this browse, you've got some options here. Open SQL editor, okay, and creating these notebooks as well. So if you look down at the bottom here, you see I've got a few that I've been working on in the recent past. And but that's fine. So this will give you the ability to, let's say, if I say new notebook, or, yep, I could choose a new one. I can give it a name, right? And then here you can see that you have the option to select a number of types of notebooks. So it could be blank. You could notebook basics, getting started with data frames. So some examples there that you could choose if you wish to do so. So something to be aware of that, and I mentioned this previously as well. So again, if you're a regular, apologies that, in terms of the time that it's taking to actually deliver this, but SingleStore is looking at hosting LLMs within our environment as well, this portal. So what you could do, you could fire up a notebook, write some Python code, have the choice of accessing some LLMs directly within this environment. Nothing for you to load, okay? You can just choose and be able to run those within this cloud-based environment. Again, that makes your lives a lot easier in terms of just building POCs, small-scale tests, and if that's something that you want to take further in terms of building enterprise applications, again, we can assist you with that process, okay? So that's very useful. Now, the reason I'm looking at the SQL editor here is that I've done some work in the past. So if I run this show tables command here, okay, you can see that it gives me some results below. So I was working on some financial tick data. So I've got a portfolio of shares. There's some stock sentiment data there as well, and some tick data that I've streamed in previously, but the feed is stopped. Okay, so I'm just working on some things there. And I wanted to show you this because what we'll do is from this local Ollama environment, we'll create a couple of tables, and we can come back and check those here and be able to see those. So that's the hybrid solution, okay, where hybrid in terms of the LLM and SingleStore, not hybrid as in terms of SingleStore, okay? So we have Ollama running locally, and I'm connecting securely to this cloud environment and then creating the tables here. And I can come back into this environment, run some SQL code, even create additional notebooks here, for example, to query the data that I may have in the tables. It really provides a lot of flexibility. Okay, so let me just minimize this a moment and just see if I can find let me just show you okay, so this is my terminal. And as you can see, I've got Jupyter running here, which I started a little while ago. Hopefully all is well there. And what we'll do here is, again, let's make this bigger. And so here is one of these notebooks. So this is from the GitHub repo. Okay, so this is simply, I've got Ollama installed through Homebrew, and I've downloaded DeepSeek here. Okay, so I've chosen the smallest. Oh, it's not my magnet. Doesn't seem to like this environment. There we go. Okay, so I'm using this R1 1.5 billion. So this is the smallest one, and this one's nice because it actually works just with CPU. You do not need a GPU to actually run this. And what I've done is I've just done the Ollama.pull for this model. It's pulled it down locally, and it's a one-time operation. Doesn't take very long. quite fast, okay, given the size here. You could choose one of the larger ones if you wish. And then what I've done is I've stressed this a little bit. I've asked it a couple of different questions here. And so far in this example, it's not using single store at all. Okay, so all I'm doing is really just testing the LLM a little bit. And the examples that I've used is a code generation and explanation. So I've asked it to write a Python function that sorts a list of numbers using the quicksort algorithm. And I said, explain the code step by step. That's the prompt. And we just execute this. And then you can see here what it does is that because we're using this kind of R1, it gives you these think and slash think. Okay, so essentially it's showing you its thinking process, and that's quite a hefty bit of thinking there. It goes on and on and on and on and on, and this takes a couple of minutes to run. Fortunately, the Mac is able to handle that. I don't see it here in terms of the fans or anything. It seems to work really well. The thing about this is that it's nice to kind of see what the process is that the LLM is using to arrive at a solution. Notice that I asked in my prompt for a Python function. What I found is that one of the previous occasions that I ran this, it actually goes through all this process, shows me it's kind of working out, if you like, and then it gives me a solution in Java. Not what I asked for. Okay, so you get no point. Okay, you get nothing for that. That didn't come out very well. Other occasions that I've run it, it does actually, produce Python code, but I haven't tested its solution, right? That's something that is important, that, how accurate is the solution and does it actually work? That's something to think about, okay? Then a problem in terms of mathematical problem solving. This is a classic in terms of a train leaves this station at this time, another train leaves another station at that time. What time will the two cross each other? Okay, when will they meet? That's kind of an interesting one. So this one, it gets the right solution. I've actually worked this out myself. And again, it shows you its thinking process, but this is fast. So whereas with the first query, it takes a bit of time to come up with an answer. This one is fast and it's correct. And then how about creative writing and constraints? Write a short story about a robot who learns to love, but the story must be no more than 200 words. It includes the words circuit, heart, and sunset. Again, it comes up with a good solution. Again, shows you its thinking process before it outputs the final result there. And it seems fairly reasonable. That, again, does a good job. And then finally here, the question answering with some context. So I've asked it particularly about Marie Curie, was a pioneering scientist known for her work in radioactivity. Okay, that's the context. And then ask, what was her most significant contribution to science? And again, it shows me its thinking. Again, fast solution, comes up with an answer very quickly, and then gives me a summary at the end here. So overall, running DeepSeek here locally seems to work well. 3 out of the 4, it got right, if I can put it that way. I mean, in some of these cases, there is no right answer. I mean, it's providing an assessment, if you like, where you're looking for a specific answer in terms of for example, the trains traveling, and then what time will they meet? I mean, that's a kind of mathematical calculation. And it gets that right as well. So that's not too bad. Okay, it does well there. So overall here, I'm generally pleased with the result. It gives me a chance to test this out. And again, it's free of charge. I'm not paying anyone for the privilege of running this. And I can choose the kind of the next size up in terms of the model. That's going to stress my Mac a little bit more. There are some vendors now providing access to the larger DeepSeek models. And if you're thinking about utilizing that, that might be worth considering. Okay, so that works well. Okay, second case. How about if we want to utilize DeepSeek with OpenAI, using the OpenAI API, if you like. So that's possible too, because Ollama provides OpenAI compatibility. So essentially, you kind of trick the system into thinking that it's talking to OpenAI and using its LLMs, but in fact, you could plug in any particular LLM that you want. It just so happens in this particular case, I've chosen to use DeepSeek. Okay, there we go. Same one. Okay, R1, 1.5 billion. So we do the same thing here. And the compatibility is again documented. So here is the way that we do it. And this, again, is a useful thing to know because if you've particularly invested, and this is not a criticism of OpenAI, but it's an option. If, for example, you decide that you would like to move off their environment, the fact that this is API compatible gives you the opportunity to do that, as well as plugging in some other LLM if you choose to do so. Okay, I mean, that's entirely up to you. But this is a great way to do it. I mean, it keeps the code tight, allows you to run this. And again, here, all I'm simply doing is just using it as a simple chatbot. And then I'm just telling it, okay, you are a helpful assistant. And then I've just posed the classic question to it: what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? And then what I've done is I've kind of disabled the think tags. Okay, otherwise it tends to get a bit verbose. It's just a question of flipping this flag from true to false. And if you really want to see what its thinking process is, so here in terms of the solution it's given me the final output, and I'm not really looking at its kind of thought process. So it correctly kind of picks up the fact that this is from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, just down here. Oops, I think my magnifier is not going to work, but it is able to do that, and it gives me a little bit more explanation there. So again, top marks for that. It does well. The fact that I can use the OpenAI compatibility again gives me flexibility, and I can plug in this or any other LLM that I choose to do so from the list that's available from Ollama. Okay, that gives me again the chance to evaluate something, pick something that's relevant to my problem, and that works really well. So these are both standalone. I did not use SingleStore at all in either of these cases. How about if we want to extend this now slightly and utilize all of this, but adding a database management system into the mix? So what we could do is we could store some data into SingleStore. We could do some kind of uh, similarity search, look for a pattern, retrieve that, and then use that as a means of passing something to the LLM to evaluate for us. And that's what we've done here. So in this example, we again use an embedding model here called Mini LM, okay, just for creating the vector embeddings. And then we use DeepSeek as again, the same one, 1.5B. This is a fairly small example, okay? So the documents are not very large. This is a super simple example, but we've got a series of lines that represent some information. We are storing those, and then here is the benefit of using LangChain, because essentially this is all we need to do in order to get those documents in, and then we're providing the details of the table that we want. Okay, what is the distance strategy we're going to use? By default, I think it's dot product, but here we've said, okay, use Euclidean distance. Please do create a vector index for us as well. And earlier we determined the number of dimensions for the vector embeddings, and then we just provide that as input here as well. And that takes care of essentially all of the stuff that you would, as a developer, would have to worry about. Creating the table, for example, creating the index, worrying about the number of dimensions, and so on. Right? And this is all managed for us. So it does a nice job. And then we were able to pose a simple question like this. Now, what animals are llamas related to? We can use the similarity search that's available here. It retrieves an answer, okay, for us. Okay, so members of the camelid family. Yeah, there we go. And then what we can do is, again, using DeepSeek, pass this data, okay, that we've just obtained above, as well as the prompt, and ask it to evaluate that for us. And again, notice that I've disabled the think tags. Again, just flip that Boolean flag to false if you really want to see its thinking. And in this particular occasion, it comes out with a reasonable answer. Again, I've run this in the past where it's produced nonsense, um, or mostly nonsense. All right. So it's one of these things, it's hallucinated. It just kind of invented some stuff, but that's not unique to DeepSeek. I mean, that's a general problem, right? It's something to think about. But overall, this combination works well as well. Okay, so remember, all of this is running locally. I am connecting to SingleStore, and I am connecting to it using this export within my environment here. Okay, and where to get this information. So as I said, I promised I would show you. So if we go to deployments, and regardless of whether you're using a free shared tier or standard tier, just look for this thing here called connect. Okay, select this, and you'll see that it's got a couple of options here: CLI client, SQL IDE, your app, BI tools, MongoDB client. So if we select CLI client, for example, it will give you the information you need. So there's the username. Okay, this long string is the host. There's the port number. There's the database. And the password is not shown here, but the first time you run this, it will show you it's auto-generated a password for you, so you can choose to use that or change it if you wish, and make a note of it, okay? Because subsequently, when you come back here, it won't show you the password, all right? For obvious reasons. But that's where you get the information, and that's all I've done. I've created this export within my Mac CLI, which shows, I've plugged in the username and the password, the host, the port number, and the database, and it's just picked that up for me. Notice that there is nothing hard-coded in the notebook itself, right? Which is great. I can give this to somebody else, and they can use it in their environment with their own information without having to modify any of the code in the notebook itself. And then the last case, let's have a look at this. Okay, I'm conscious of time. So in this one, what we do is we take it a step further. So we download a document from the internet. This happens to be investment opportunities in Northern Ireland. I think it's one of my favorite docs because it's got some stuff in there about blockchain. And so what I've done is I've got this file. Okay, so we're using this online PDF loader to grab this file. And then we do a little bit of chunking up. Okay, recursive text splitter. We divide it up. These 2000, chunk size is 2000 and overlap is 20. A little bit of overlap. Could have set it to 0, but I think it's reasonable to have a little bit of overlap. And then we just store this in SingleStore, again, using Ollama here. Okay, notice that the distance strategy this time is .product. That's the default one. I didn't have to use that one. And again, I've asked it to create a vector index for me as well, using the defaults. And then just ask it a question, what are the best investment opportunities in blockchain? So it comes back with some recommendations here, suggestions, and then again, using both the prompt and the data returned, passing these to DeepSeek. Again, disabling the think tags. Okay, you just need to flip that Boolean from true to false, okay, if you want to see its thinking process. And then it comes back with some observations there and recommendations. So that's not bad. It's done a reasonable job there in this particular case. So my overall assessment of this is that testing DeepSeek this way, you have full control of it. Okay, you're not having to go to a third party. You don't have to pay anyone for the privilege of doing this. You can run it locally. I opted for the smallest model that runs on the CPU. You don't need a GPU for that. But if you go for some of the larger ones, you will need, a more powerful machine, I would say, in order to get good results from that. That's something to think about. But you run it locally. It's entirely in your control. In this particular example that you've seen and the previous one, we aren't running SingleStore locally as well, but we are connecting securely to it in the cloud. And if we do that, that kind of gives us the best of both worlds for this particular scenario. You may choose to install SingleStore locally, okay, particularly if you're in sort of the financial world, for example, where you may not be able to utilize the cloud. But again, all of this can sit behind your firewall. And again, DeepSeek is just one of many options that you have today. There are others, and I'm sure during the rest of this year, we're going to see a lot more innovation. It seems to be coming, thick and fast. Not a day goes by, but there is another announcement from some other LLM provider and some new model that's out, and it's even better. And the benchmark results are awesome. And that's the way it is. But here's a way that gives you a chance to try it out at very little cost. A little bit of your time, 5 to 10 minutes, just to set Ollama up, configure it. Does take a bit of time to download the LLM, particularly if it's large. Okay, but it's a one-time operation. Okay, you don't have to do that over and over again. And then what you can do is, particularly with SingleStore, the free shared tier will be great for small-scale testing. Leave it running all the time, and I do that now, and then just connect to it from my local Mac environment. Okay, so that works really well. Okay, so Yukti should have shared the GitHub repo link for you with all of the notebooks that you've seen me use today. This is the article that was published originally on Medium and then subsequently on DZone as well, which is slightly different because here I actually use the standard tier. I create a dedicated database and so on. So you'll see that it goes into a bit more detail, but it's just using Linux and using the curl command there to install and run Ollama. And I think it's one of Meta's LLMs that was used for that particular example. Okay, so let's just wrap up then. So, okay, there we go. All right. So, summary. I think the benefits of local LLMs: greater control and privacy, reduces risk of unauthorized access, data breaches. I think that's a good thing. Cost effective, avoid subscription fees or usage-based billing. I think that's going to be really helpful as well. Despite the fact that the costs have come down enormously. For example, I use OpenAI from time to time, and I've noticed that, I mean, the cost of using their services is so small now, I don't even claim back my expenses through SingleStore because it's not worth it. It's like pennies. I mean, that's how small it is. But again, there may be other reasons why you decide to run something locally and could be better for you. Oops, pardon me. I'm just trying to be a bit too clever there. Faster inference times, reduced latency, eliminates the need to communicate with remote servers, benefiting real-time applications. Okay, that could be really useful. But again, you need to have a machine with a bit more power and memory and processing speed to really, I think, benefit from that. On this Mac, which is an M3, even for some of those queries, you'll remember the very first notebook that I showed you in terms of asking DeepSeek, write me Python code for a quick sort and show me your thinking. It takes like about 5 minutes before it comes back with an answer. So, you want something a bit faster than that. Customization and fine-tuning, there are good examples that I'm starting to see of people publishing guidelines on fine-tuning, things like DeepSeek, for example, how to take that a step further for some specific vertical or problem that you have, and what are the steps that you would need to do in order to get that a bit more closer to your requirements and your needs versus being a kind of a general purpose solution, which sometimes tends to fail. Okay, and as I've mentioned, some of the examples that I've shown you, in fact, that has actually happened. Okay, there we go. So any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. One of my favorite quotes from Arthur C. Clarke. So I just Childhood's End, I think, was one of his books, I believe, and that was broadcast on the BBC for the weekend. So I was kind of interested to see what other things he'd written. All right, and with that, let me thank you for your time and for your attention. And Yukti, over to you, please. If we have some questions, I'm happy to assist. If there's anything in particular you found that would requires my attention now, or we could follow up later if there's something that's kind of a bit deeper.
We actually have a lot of questions for you, Akmal.
Yeah.
Number one, we actually, I'll just let everyone know that anyone that joined late, we will be sending out a follow-up email that has all the links. Peter, I see a question. I'll be posting everything like, for you in the as an answer for your question. I'll include all the links. So, Akmal, you can see the questions, right?
All
So
right.
there's actually a lot of them. So
Okay.
you can just pick
Okay,
out
but
one of the
anything
questions.
in particular
Meanwhile,
caught
I'll
your eye? Sorry to interrupt you.
yeah,
Anything?
I'll just answer a few of them.
Oh,
So
okay. Please.
now you can take one of the questions. I'll just let you know. So there's a question from Mayank. They say that is single store providing support for Predibase, which is a SLM provider. So if you have any thoughts on that, let us know. Meanwhile, I'll be, answering some questions like via chat. So it's easier for you that way. So
Okay.
to everyone, we are officially open for the Q&A session. So feel free to add the questions coming in. If you have any questions that go on unanswered, we have a Discord channel as well. Feel free to join that and we can continue the discussion there. So Akmal, please take it away because I know we are short on time. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's okay. All right. Okay. Did you mention Predibase? Was that the technology? Let me just get to the
yeah.
Q&A. That's not something I've heard about. Um, Okay, I see a couple of questions there. All right, let me just go through these. So Frank has asked, how can I perform hybrid search? That's a great question, Frank. So thank you for that. So yes, so single store as part of the offering for the full text search supports BM25 as well now. And so if you check the LangChain documentation, you will see that it provides the ability to combine both the semantic search, which you saw examples today, with full text search as well. So you can do both. So that's something that could be very useful as well. And full text has some advantages as well. And I think with the new Lucene engine, which is kind of version 2 now, and the BM25 support, I think that's going to provide a lot of benefits as well. Uh, Yeah, so Frank and Frank, what I noticed is that some of my colleagues actually just published. There was a blog post just published today, I think, that not quite on the hybrid search, but talks a little bit about n-grams and using the new offering that we have in terms of full text. So Rohit, I think, and another gentleman, name escapes me for the moment. They published something. That's something we can provide additional resources for. Shaji says, is there an option to run single store cluster in a split mode? Some instances running partly in memory like memsql and others on disk persistence. I have an embedded environment where data originates, hence the question. Right, there are still tables available that you can control in terms of keeping them in memory. Why would you do that? Because they are small, perhaps like reference tables, for example, that you're using as lookup capability. So yes, you can do that. The recommendation is generally you use the universal storage and the mechanism that's available today because it will handle the both types of processing for you. But if you really need to create something that will just stay in memory, yes, you can still do that. That's possible too. So I've actually used that in the past when I was working with some of the geospatial data. So for example, I may have information about representing each of the continents, for example, and the number of points that I was using was fairly small. Okay, I mean, if you think you want an accurate representation, then you would need many thousands, if not millions, of points to do a better representation of what, say, North America or South America look like. But if you've got a smaller number of points, let's say we want to create a reference table just in memory so we can access it quickly, perfectly possible. And that's a great way and a great use case in order to do that. Vishal, so where the recording will be able to see? Right, so Yukti will send out a link. So if you are registered for the webinar and you're here, which you have done so, then you will get a link to the recording as well as the follow-up email with Yukti will include the link to the GitHub repo plus the article as well. Predibase, Mayank, my apologies. It's not a technology that I've come across. Neither have I heard about it within SingleStore. So it's something that I'd have to look into. All I would say is that generally we've got good connectivity to a wide range of tools and technologies, and we work really well with them. A couple of them I mentioned earlier, Spark, for example, Kafka. This concept of pipelines as well, which really works well in terms of massive ingest. But other things, there are JDBC, ODBC connectors, and so on. So let me look into that for you, okay? Like I said, I've not heard about that, and it's not something I've come across. But that's a great way for me to improve my knowledge as well. Robert Gray, yes, Robert, 42, that's correct. So the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Frank, you got another question? I don't want to use basic similarity search. What should I do? Yeah, have a look at the full text search, Frank. That's what I'd strongly recommend, especially because it's version 2 now. So it really goes far beyond what the original version did. And yes, the semantic search, which you saw kind of today in terms of being able to look for patterns. And then, I mean, it's under the covers, obviously, is doing a vector match, right? I mean, it's trying to look for something similar enough in terms of Euclidean distance or dot product that can work really well. But if you want something more meaningful and utilize the full text capability as well to do this kind of hybrid, I think that will work really well for you as well. Raymond, in cell 6, dimensions is set to the length of the first document. Yes, that's correct, Raymond. So essentially, we get back, because the way that the embeddings are generated, they are all of equal length. So it doesn't matter. You could take the first document, or you could take the last document, or the nth document, wherever that may sit. It will be the same. I just happen to choose the first one, and you'll see in the event, for example, that we had a mismatch at the time that it's trying to create the table and trying to store the data, LangChain would blow up. Okay, you would get an error, and SingleStore will not like that either. The embeddings have to be the same length. So the fact that I'm just picking the first document, determining its length, is sufficient for me to for every other document as well, because their length is going to be exactly the same too. But great question. Thank you for highlighting that. I ought to put some more comments in my code. I agree, and that may be something to do. Mukesh, you're asking, where can I get access to the past webinars? A lot of them are available on YouTube. And so we have a YouTube channel. We also have some of the recent ones that are available through the events page. Okay, so if you look there, you'll see some links to the recent ones. We obviously don't link every single one from that page, but I would suggest go to YouTube, okay, where we post a lot of the webinars over time. Anthony, you've got a question. How does SingleStore think about decision making with the breakneck pace of new technology being developed? What tech on the horizon do you see integrating with? That's a great question. I'm not in product management. Those guys are working on some super secret stuff, okay? So that's all I can say. But we do keep our eyes and ears open. And obviously, as you've observed, the pace of change is so fast these days. The other thing that I think I see right now, which is kind of gaining traction and importance, and we're starting to see people using some of this in anger now for real world application, is this concept of agents. That's something that's been bubbling for a while. I've seen some discussion about this last year. Now, today, I am seeing more and more of this, to the point where I've come across some discussions on LinkedIn, for example, where people are saying they've eliminated a lot of processes that they would do manually. They've automated it through this process of agents. Agents can even build their applications for them. They are awesome. Okay, so this is the next big thing. We'll see. Okay, this is one of those things that once you see actual business benefits from that, then you think to yourself, right, this might be something to think about. But keep your eyes on that space, I think, definitely. And then the pace of change is just so fast, as you've rightly observed. I wish I could say more. And if I had a crystal ball, I'd make a lot of money and probably retire. That's not going to happen anytime soon, I think. Carl, yes, thank you for your comments. Lawrence, thank you for your comments as well, sir. So I think that's it, Yukti. We've covered all of that, and we're not too much over time today. Normally we tend to go on and on and on, so we're only 5 minutes over, and I'll hand that back to you. Okay. So please, any other links, if there's anything else that's requested, Yukti will be more than happy to share that in a follow-up email. But at least we'll send out these resources to you. And again, literally in 5 to 10 minutes, once you've got Ollama installed, I mean, you can be up and running and testing this stuff out yourself. And that's the beauty of it. It's all under your control.
All right. So thank you so much, Akmal, for your time and this amazing presentation. Folks, if you enjoyed this particular session, you can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and it's pretty easy to find me, and just give any feedback or any ideas that you would have on future sessions. If you want to see us present anything, let us know. We are very open to feedback, and we actually make sure to incorporate your suggestions into our webinars, because this particular webinar, a lot of people actually requested me to present DeepSeek along with SingleStore. So yeah, I believe it was pretty interesting. So I have a lot of, we actually send out follow-up emails that have the recording. So in case if anyone was wondering about that, and you can go to our resources pages, and you can select events plus webinars section, and you can find past recordings. If you need anything specific, email us, reach out to me. You can see the email. Let us know, and we'll actually be back with more content in March. And stay tuned for that. If you still have any questions, you can join our Discord channel, and we will be open to taking up your questions over there. And yeah, we can keep the discussion continuing over there. So yeah, Akmal, I think all good from your side, right?
Yeah, and Discord. Yeah. So any further questions, please come over to Discord. Just ping me, okay? So I hang out there as well. So if there's anything you want to follow up with, further discussion, any questions, come along over there. And I mean, Yukti, you've shared the invite link, haven't you? I assume
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have.
I
And
have,
then
I have.
all right, that's great. And then people can just join. And so if you've got anything else you would like to follow up with, please reach out to me there. I'll be more than happy to engage with you on the Discord server.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we are good to go, and stay tuned for our future sessions. And thanks everyone for attending. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.